Hey, hi, hello, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Jess, and I'm going to be talking about the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix today. This video will be filled with spoilers, so you've been warned. But I would just like to say that people who make hoodies and sweatshirts, crew necks, need to think about us people with big heads and big hair, because every time I'm trying to put one on, I'm like, okay, my hair is fine. Then I put it on, and then it messes up my hair. I swear the fashion industry only thinks about people who have a small head or flat hair or no arms or narrow shoulders, no hips, no booty, no thigh, no calf, and it's getting on my nerves. It is getting on my nerves. No boobies, like clothing is aggravating, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about this book. But we do have to take a quick break and thank today's sponsor, which is Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for creators. Explore new skills, deepen existing passions, and get lost in creativity. There are so many classes covering so many different topics, from editing, photography, painting, and even sewing. Yes, please tell me why I was like, you know what, I need to learn how to make my own clothes. And this is partially inspired by Mara, who was talking about getting a sewing machine. But yes, even if you want to look at how to draw your own patterns and make your own clothes, Skillshare has you covered. It's curated specifically for learning, so there's no ads. We're always launching new premium classes so you can stay focused and follow wherever your creativity takes you. And because you're one of my amazing subscribers, if you click the link that's in my description and also the pinned comment, if you're one of the first 1,000 people, you'll get a free month of Skillshare Premium so you can explore. Thank you so much to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Let's get back to my review. So in my wrap up, I asked if y'all would like a spoilery video, and a lot of you said yes. And so of course there's no script, there's no notes. This is just word vomit. So this is a horror novel that came out in 2020, and I heard a lot of people talking about this book, and I thought from the title that's a really interesting, it sounds interesting, and then I would hear people talk about it, you know, just vague things, and they said, oh, it's so unique and the way it was written, and just seeing the cover, I'm like, okay, it's obviously gonna be Southern people in a book club, and there's something about vampires, which technically this is, but it is, that's a whole different conversation about marketing. I don't know exactly what the best cover would have been or title, but I just don't think this sets you up for what's inside the book. So yeah, when I finished it, I didn't give it a star rating. Hopefully by the end of my ranting, word vomiting, I don't think I have a lot to rant about. I will figure that out, but we shall see. So this is my first book I read by Grady Hendrix. I haven't read any others since. Like I said, I heard great things. For the most part, I saw mostly 4 and 5 star reviews from people I follow or watch. The Goodreads rating is like 3.89. But like I said, I heard overwhelmingly positive things. So this book is like 4, right at 400 pages. But it is such a fast read. Like, the words aren't super small. It is one of the most compulsively readable books I've ever read. Like, I would just be sitting there and I'm like, I just read 200 pages. I don't know how that happened. It's very strange. But this book is set, it starts in the late 80s in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, which is, so I grew up outside of Charleston. Charleston, South Carolina is a very popular place, but it's part of the Low Country, and there's lots of towns and cities around it. I grew up in Somerville, but this takes place in Mount Pleasant, and so this felt very familiar to me. Although I was not alive in the late 80s there, I still, so much of it feels familiar. There have been things that have changed, but I learned after this that he did grow up in the Charleston area. And we mainly have the point of view of one woman, Patricia, but she's a part of a group of housewives who, for the most part, they're all pretty wealthy, like the families, and they all have children. So they're really just late 80s, and it goes into the early 90s, white women in the South, housewives. I saw someone's review that was like, this is like Dracula meets Steel Magnolias, and I'm like, oh, I don't know about that now, but Southern white women. And there's only one vampire. I don't know why I expected more. Maybe because it says vampires. Vampires! We got a vampire. And it's definitely an interesting take on a vampire story. So essentially, these are all housewives. It's the late 80s. Their husbands really don't take them seriously. They see their place as to take care of the children, to cook, to clean, to look good, you know, in public, go to church, be at the PTA meeting. That's their purpose. And it could be hard to read that at some point because the men are really the worst. Like, oh my God. And maybe that's what Grady Hendrix meant to do. Like, he didn't want the only villain to be the vampire. Like, all the men are trash. Like, throw them all away. And the way they treat their wives, talk to their wives, oh my God. Like, at some point I'm like, is this? And I'm like, you know what? I'm sure that this happened. I'm sure it still does happen to some people. I am not a rich white lady, so I cannot comment. This is not how my marriage is. But woof. It's tough to read those parts because you're like, girl, slap him. Leave him. But they don't work. They're dependent on their husband. You know, they have children, they have lives. You know, they're involved in the community. It's not that easy, but I just wanted them to smack the shit out of these dudes because they're fucking trash. They're misogynist and they're just pigs. Literally, they're pigs. So our vampire enters the story. They have this neighbor on their street who's this old lady, and randomly one night she bites Patricia. Like, she comes over to the house. I think she's like outside or something, and she looks like she is not doing well, and then she ends up attacking Patricia and ends up like biting off a piece of her ear. She goes to the hospital. The old lady, she later dies, and her like nephew or great nephew or something comes into town to like tie up all of her loose ends or whatever in the house. And that is James. Is it James? James? I am not good with names. James Harris. And so of course a good Southern woman's like, oh, I gotta, you know, go over here and say hello or whatever. But I can't remember if her first introduction to him was just going over and taking a casserole or something, or I think she might have gone over there because, you know, they're all about appearances in their neighborhood. This is a really nice upscale Mount Pleasant neighborhood. Been to those. And something about this ugly car or ugly van that was parked in front of the house. I can't remember which situation. Anyway, she ends up going over there and goes in the house. Like, he didn't answer the door, and she walks in the house. And she finds him like laying across the bed, and she thinks he's dead, so she has to do like CPR, but he like wakes up and is like, I was just sleeping, girl. Psycho. It's so weird. Did I mark that part? Like, I borrowed this from the library. I went back and picked it up today just so I threw some quick tabs in here. I just wanted to point out a few sections. Anyway, that's how they first meet, and he explains like, I'm sorry, I have an eye condition. Like, I don't like going out in the daylight because the sunlight messes with my irises. But I think she also notes that he really doesn't have a pulse. He's really cold, but he, you know, explains this all the way. And she's like, okay. She's basically like mesmerized. And they become friendly over, you know, different encounters, to where he eventually asks her, like, he says he's going through all of this stuff and he's like trying to go through and like settle bills and stuff, and so she ends up helping him. So they go to these places to take care of the bills, and then he's like, oh, I forgot my wallet. And so she's just like, oh, no problem, I'll pay it and you pay me back. Which maybe in the late 80s, 90s, people were more understanding like that, but I'm sorry, you just met this man and you just pulling out your checkbook, writing him checks and assuming he's good for it. I mean, good for you being a good person. Could not be me, but good for you. So she like writes him a couple of checks, and then he's like, oh, I'm so embarrassed, I'll pay you back. And then he tells her that he finds like $85,000 cash in his grandmother's house, whatever relation she is to him. I'm just gonna call him her grandmother. And he needs a bank account, but she basically also opens up like cosigns or whatever on the bank account for him. And I'm just like, that's a lot for someone you don't know really well. And a lot, especially if you, obviously their money, his money is her money, you know, her husband, and a checkbook. But she's like, oh, I'll just hide it from him. And maybe she balances the checkbook or something. But I was like, that's just a lot to go out on a limb for someone you just met. I know you're being neighborly and Southern hospitality, but fuck that. I'm not co-signing on bills or writing you checks. I'm not doing that. it. Patricia is really like enraptured with him. She's like, she's not having an affair, but I feel like she's in her mind, she's just like really like thinking about him a lot and thinking about what ifs and stuff. It was also really interesting since we were mainly following Patricia's point of view, and she was treated, you know, so terribly by her husband, and he really just found her to be inconsequential and didn't take her seriously. And then this man slash vampire enters the picture, and while maybe it was like the mystery, the allure around him, but I feel like she got really drawn into him at first because of like the lack of attention and you know, maybe desire from her husband. Well, you know, I don't know. And they have like this scare where they think someone's like on their roof, and he comes over to the house at the perfect time, and her husband comes home later and was like, oh, thank God you were here, like you're a stand-up man, you're always welcome in my home. And again, I'm like, why are y'all so trusting of this man? We do get little glimpses of the other woman, but I can't remember their names that well. I know there's Slick, who was like super religious, and then there was someone else who had a bunch of kids and her house was always a mess, and there was someone else who was just like really like, I feel like the most uptight and like always polishing her fine china. Different women in this group. And then you got Patricia's kind of in the middle. I don't know how certain people feel about this, but Patricia, obviously, who we're mainly focusing on, has the most like depth about her. Like, I remember the most about her, and she has the most character development because she does eventually realize how shitty her husband is and ask for a divorce in the end. And I was like, yes, go queen. But the rest of them, I almost felt like they were, is archetype the right word? Or like, I don't know, just like a placeholder for just different types of women in like these kinds of relationships. You had like the uber Christian one, and then the very prim one who has to have all of her, everything about her looks so put together on the outside, but then you go to her house and her husband's abusing her. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I don't really remember many people besides Patricia and then Slick, who was the super religious one. But I don't know if y'all had any thoughts about that at all. And like I said, things start happening. So there's this weird thing where Patricia's mother-in-law lives with them because she has dementia, and they hired a full-time caretaker for her, and it's a woman named Miss Green. Now, everyone in the story up to now is white. Miss Green is a black woman, and she basically is there every day to take care of Patricia's mother-in-law. And finally there are times when Patricia's mother-in-law, you know, she's often ignored because she has dementia, but she'll say things when she says James, like, I know you and you're this person, and calling him a different name, and they're like, oh, she's just literally out of her mind, she doesn't know. And I'm like, but doesn't she though? And then she is basically like calling him out for who he really is, and then something happens to her. So Miss Green is taking care of her, and then there's this attack of rats. Warning, the following content may contain discussions of scenes which some viewers may find upsetting. Viewer discretion is advised. It starts with 1, and then 2, then 7, then 15, then what? Like, it's disgusting. I'm gonna read this, and I hope you're not eating anything. So Miss Green ran to Miss Mary's armchair, but froze as the heavy rats skittered across her bare feet, their sharp nails scratching her skin, their hairless tails cold against her flesh. A few of them stopped and sank their claws into her pants leg and began pulling themselves up. She did a frantic high-stepping dance to shake them free. Razor blades shredded her toes. She reached down to pluck a gray rat out of her pants leg, and it caught on one of her fingers in its mouth. Okay, I can't do it anymore. It was one of the most horrific scenes I have ever read. And Miss Mary ended up dying. So Patricia's mother-in-law, Miss Green, was injured, and so she wasn't working. Oh my God. Horrific. But Patricia and one of her friends end up going out to where Miss Green lives, which of course is a not great area, to like take her a pie, maybe, and some like money. And of course, you know, they're like, ooh. And this is where you really start seeing the conversation that Grady Hendrix is having around like class and race, and where my question marks start to come into play of how I really feel about it. So of course, Mount Pleasant used to be home to a lot of black people, a lot of like Gullah people, and they've been slowly pushed out, and even worse now. When I lived in Mount Pleasant, I mean, even this area that I think he's describing in the book is not even, it's all like Harris Teeter and Publix, and like it's just been pushed out, big expensive neighborhoods, and like goes further from Mount Pleasant all the way into Allendale. Like it's not even cheap to live out there anymore. It's very expensive to even live in the boonies past Mount Pleasant. But so a lot of gentrification. This story touches on that a little bit, but so you're seeing there where they're living, it's like not a good area, nothing's landscaped, lots of mobile homes, some on cinder blocks, some, you know, people outside not looking up to speed or whatever, to go visit Miss Green. And so she's like, I don't want your charity, I want to work. Because, you know, she's like, I don't need you to come hand me money. Like, I just need to know that I'm going to have a job because, you know, this isn't my fault. And she starts, because she's saying that she's trying to work towards sending her boys up to Irmo, which is outside of Columbia, which is like an hour and a half northwest of Charleston. And they're like, oh, she's like, why, for like the summer? She's like, no, to get him out of here because kids have been going missing. And so this is Miss Green talking about, this is a black woman talking about there have been children going missing, particularly black children. And of course, one of the, Patricia's friend, I think her name is Kitty, is like, well, I didn't hear about that on the news. I didn't hear nothing about that. And she's like, Miss Green's like, well, so you're trying to say I'm lying? It's like, no, but why hasn't that, you know, why isn't there a report in the news? She said it has been, but certain things have happened, and they've of course been either they're not front page or they're rewritten as like, oh, something involving drugs. And the friend of Patricia's, Kitty, even says something like, oh, is it drugs? Like, but when they first got there was a kid who was a little aggressive, like, what are you white women doing out here? And Miss Green shoot him away. And Miss Green says, you have to forgive those boys. Everyone out here has their nerves up about strangers. And Kitty goes, because of super predators? And Miss Green says, no, ma'am, because of the children. And Kitty says, are they on drugs? No, no one out here is on drugs as far as I know, unless you count brown liquor or Little Rabbit tobacco. He really starts to comment on the differences between like rich white people and poor black people in the same area, how they're just down the road and they're experiencing something serious and significant that you would think when there are children that go missing that it would be flashed across the front page of the paper, on the news, you would hear about it. But when it's black children, it's a very different story. So I'm glad that he pointed that out. And I feel like this situation is very realistic because, especially if you grow up in a privileged world, I feel like privilege sometimes also leads to like a kind of a bubble around you. Like you don't have to really see the realities of the world and all these different things. So you're like, what's happening? Something's happening to the children. It must be, is super predators like Bill Clinton said? Is it drugs? Like, I'm not articulating my feelings well because I just don't know how to. I had mixed feelings when I was reading it. Like I didn't know how I felt with is it juxtaposition? I don't know if that's the right word. I'm not that smart, but the comparison there. But I feel on reflection that it definitely was a commentary on how these communities can just ignore or don't even know about what's going on because of the whole system, you know, like police aren't taking these black families seriously when they say something happened to their kids, or when something does happen and there's proof, they write it off as like, oh, it was a gang thing, it was a drug thing. Like they don't want to take it seriously. And that's sadly still very accurate today, not just in the South. Black people, black children are always valued less than, you know, their white counterparts. So it was very interesting for him to touch on that in the story. And so going forward, so I can't remember the exact timeline, but eventually she comes back out. Patricia goes back out to Miss Green and with another one of her friends, and they're talking to another mother who said their daughter's been acting weird. And so they go over to her home and she's like, all right, I'm gonna, you know, introduce you to my daughter, and her daughter's out there. So Patricia goes off to look. She finds this man, James Harris. So she finds James Harris. He's in a van in the middle of the woods, and she comes up on the van And I don't know, is the door open? So she walked to the back of the van, wrapped her hand around the door handle and pulled. Then she raised her flashlight and turned it on. Like, girl, can you be any more obvious? You can like peek in the window first. A man's back bent over something on the floor. His rear end and the soles of his work boots turned toward her, and then his back reared up and he turned into the flashlight's beam and she saw James Harris. But there was something wrong with the lower half of his face. Something black, shiny, and chitinous. I'm sorry. Like a cockroach's leg. Most people are afraid of spiders. I am terrified of roaches. Oh, it's sickening. Stuck several inches out of his mouth, his jaws hung open, stupefied as he blinked blearily in the light, but otherwise his body didn't move as a long insectoid appendage slowly withdrew into his mouth, and when it had retreated fully, he closed his lips and saw that his chin, and she saw that his chin and cheeks and the tip of his nose were coated in slick, wet blood. Beneath him, a young black girl lay sprawled on the floor, long orange t-shirt pushed up to her stomach, legs akimbo, an ugly dark purple mark on the inside of one thigh, oily with fluids. And then he gets up, and I was confused at how big this van was because he like gets up, but he's not at her already. Like he said, the van rocked as he took another step. How many steps can you take inside a van before you're at the door? Whatever, but that part was disgusting because the visual, but also I still don't think I like the way Grady Hendrix did the vampire, because it's very sexual. Like, I mean, sucking blood always has kind of like a sexual connotation, right? Even from the wrist or from the neck, but it was always between their legs, like their thigh. And I still don't like that. I don't know what that's trying to say. I didn't get anything besides let's make this even more gross, because not only is he taking their blood, but he is almost sexually assaulting them, which I don't feel like is necessary. Like, he's already taking advantage of a person, you know, by taking their blood. Most, you know, they're not willing. So I don't think we needed to add that. But I feel like a lot of writers add sexual assault into stories to make it worse. Like, that was bad enough for me. The little thing was enough. For me, you didn't need to add in that you're in between the thighs of a little girl. And she's not the only one, because later in the story, it happens to Patricia's daughter. Does it happen to her daughter or her? No, maybe not her daughter. Maybe it's just her.
So I found the part in the book, and it does also happen to Patricia's daughter, Corey. The passage says that she walked in and saw two pale, naked bodies lay on the bed. She realized the one closest to her was James Harris, his muscled back and buttocks moving slightly rhythmically, pulsing like a heartbeat. He knelt beneath the smooth, long legs of a girl with a flat stomach and firm, upturned, underdeveloped teenage breast. His mouth was affixed to a place on her inner thigh right next to her pubis. Her hair was spread out across the pillow, her eyes were half closed in ecstasy, and she smiled with abandon, a smile Patricia had never seen before on Corey's face. See, I don't think he needed to do that. I just really don't think that was necessary. It's just gross. Like, yeah, I don't know.
I can't remember. I think it happens to Patricia as well, because she kind of like sets herself up as like a trap for the vampire. I can't remember, but those are just like two we see on page are Patricia and then this little girl. And I'm like, that's gross. We didn't need it. Like, it's not like it didn't hurt me. But it's just like, ew, we didn't need that. So I don't like that. I still don't like it. And they're also Slick, who's the most religious friend of Patricia, gets raped by him later in the book. And then you find out that essentially he's like shared his vampireness and like she's gonna turn into one or something, but then she dies. So yeah, the way that was handled, I still don't like that. I don't like it. I don't like that at all. And then they're like, well, we have to kill him. But, you know, they looked up these things and they know they can't just like shoot him or whatever. And so they have to chop up his body. And it's basically all the ladies in her book club plus Mrs. Green, but I'm mad that Mrs. Green was doing more of the physical labor because she was like, I'm not playing with you bitches. We already got this man and he's gonna have to die, and she's there sawing off pieces while these other bitches are freaking having an existential crisis while they're supposed to be murdering a man. And it's like funny but not funny, because while they're cutting him apart, he's still alive because he's a vampire. It's like he's just talking shit like, oh, you're gonna regret this. I don't die that easily, as she saws through his femur. And I'm just like, oh, okay. And they like, here's the part that didn't make sense to me. So they like put all his body parts in different bags, and then one of the friends is supposed to have access to not an incinerator, but a crematory to like burn, because obviously you can't just like, human bodies don't burn easily at like a temperature you could just put near a fireplace or whatever. And for some reason, I can't remember, she like either doesn't have the key or people are there or something, and they change the plan, and instead they just go bury him in like different graves or something, but he's still like moving, and like it's hinted at the end like the grave is still like he's still alive, but he's just in different parts and he can't get back together. So I'm like, is it supposed to be open for a sequel or what? Why didn't they just burn him? And then that would have been, definitely he would have been gone. So very interesting there. So I really liked the horror elements, even though they made me want to vomit, but like, I mean, it's horror. How fast I read it, it's just so readable. And the commentary, while it's not enjoyable to read, I did appreciate it. So it was interesting. While I was reading it, I kind of was like, what are you trying to say? But I feel like I understand that more. And I don't think the commentary, what he was trying to go for with the sexual assault, I just don't think that was necessary. And it was gross. And then there also was this weird thing where Patricia's son was really into Nazis, and not like, ooh, I'm interested in World War II, let me learn more about it, different parties and countries that were involved, like literally just interested in Nazis. And I don't know why that never was like addressed by his parents, like, hey, I love that you love history, but like, let's talk about it, or here's some other areas during that time in history you can learn about. Like, I didn't like that. So I don't know if any of this made sense, if any of this related to your experience with reading the book. I know that people often will say the author did what they were trying to do, or the author, you know, what they set out to do, they accomplished. And my question is, and this is a legit question, how do you know that? Like,
so this did continue for like 12 minutes in like a weird kind of rant, but I'm going to take it out of this video because I wanted to do a separate video about it. But if you want to answer that question, feel free to down below. But I wanted to get some other opinions, feedback, and kind of expound on it in its own video. So hopefully that'll be out next week.
If you have any thoughts on anything I said, if you loved it, if you didn't, just like, this is full of spoilers, so just let it out in the comments. I think I would give it a 3.75, round it up to a 4, because there was a lot that I didn't enjoy overall, even if some of it was like vomit inducing to read. Yeah, I don't know. I hope that my thoughts helped you process your thoughts, or maybe you don't agree with me. But thank you for watching this entire video. Thank you to my patrons, Lisa, Hannah, Brina, Kayla, Jamie, Rainer, Danielle, Katie, Bobby, Jen, Leo, Kate, Terry, Emily, Jessie, Janine, Sarah, Pepper, Shannon, Kirsten, Elizaveta, Amber, Celine, Maria, and Serena, and to Nigel, Lavandria, Stans, Brianna, Katrina, Rosie, Ava, Claire, Carrie, Demery, and Rainey, and of course a big thank you to friends and admirers of Bebe. Thank you to everyone who watches and supports the channel. But that is going to be it for me today. Again, let me know your thoughts down below. Thanks again to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. Give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, check out my description. There's always information I'll link there. And I hope you stay hydrated, blessed, moisturized, and sunscreened. And I'll see you in my next one. Bye!